Government of Mali National Committee for the Salvation of the People Tuareg Rebellion. 2012 coup internal conflict in Azawad. Foreign intervention. 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021 on the 18th of August 2020. Elements of the Malian armed forces began a mutiny. Soldiers on pickup trucks stormed the Soundiata military base in the town of Kati, where gunfire was exchanged before weapons were distributed from the armory and senior officers. Arrested. Tanks and armored vehicles were seen on the town's streets, as well as military trucks heading for the capital, Bamako. The soldiers detained several government officials including President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, who resigned and dissolved the government. This was the country's second coup in less than 10 years. Following the 2012 coup d'état, protests in Mali had been ongoing since the 5th of June, with protesters calling for the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Protesters were displeased with the government's management of the ongoing insurgency, alleged government corruption, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and a floundering economy. 11 deaths and 124 injuries were reported during the protests. On the morning of the 18th of August 2020, soldiers began firing bullets into the air at a military base in Kati, a town 15 kilometers away from Bamako, the capital of Mali. After moving into the capital, the mutineers arrested Minister of Finance Abdoulaye Daf, the Chief of Staff of the National Guard Mohamed Touré, and Moussa Timbine, Speaker of the National Assembly. The Prime Minister, Boubou Cissé, appealed for dialogue with the mutineers, acknowledging they held legitimate frustrations. A mutiny leader later claimed that Keïta and Cissé had been arrested at the former's residence in Bamako. African Union Commission Chairman Moussa Faki confirmed that Keïta, Cissé, and other officials had been arrested and called for their release. A spokesman for the M5 RFP opposition coalition welcomed their detention, describing it as a popular insurrection. The officials were taken to the military camp in Kati where the uprising began. As news of the mutiny spread, hundreds of protesters gathered at Bamako's Independence Monument to demand Keïta's resignation. Protesters also set a building belonging to the Ministry of Justice ablaze. At the time, it was not clear how many soldiers took part in the coup, who initiated it or who would now take charge. President Keïta resigned around midnight, while also dissolving the government and parliament. "I want no blood to be spilled to keep me in power," he added. 5 colonels appeared in the TV broadcast to the nation, led by Colonel Assimi Goïta. They called themselves the National Committee for the Salvation of the People. The bodies of 4 people killed by gunfire and about 15 wounded, all likely hit by stray bullets, were brought into one of the city's main hospitals, said El Haj Jimé Conte, a spokesman for the hospital union. The coup leaders denied that anyone had been killed, but soldiers were constantly firing in the air, cheered on by crowds of young people. Military leaders had ordered closure of all border crossings and imposed a nighttime curfew. As of today, the 19th of August 2020, all air and land borders are closed until further notice. A curfew is in place from 2100 to 5 o'clock until further notice, Colonel Major Ismail Wagwe, Deputy Chief of Staff of the Malian Air Force, said in a televised address. He also invited opposition groups to talks for fresh elections. Opposition member Mahmoud Dicko announced that he is leaving politics as a result of a meeting between him and some of the soldiers that took part in the mutiny. Coup leaders promised new elections within a reasonable timeline, without specifying what that meant. Keïta left the country in September for medical treatment in the United Arab Emirates. Keïta, 75 years old, was originally hospitalized in the capital a few days before leaving. Experts chosen by Mali's new military chieftains have proposed a 2-year interim government led by a president chosen by them. Despite calls by Mali's neighbors for elections within a year, they suggest that the soldiers behind the coup nominate the interim president and vice president, and propose the interim president choose the prime minister. Under the draft, the president would be from the civil or military sectors. The nominee must be between the ages of 35 and 75 and would not be allowed to run for election at the end of the transition. Right after the coup, military leaders promised to reinstate a civilian government and hold elections within a relatively short time frame. On the 12th of September 2020, the National Committee for the Salvation of the People agreed to an 18-month political transition to civilian rule. On the 21st of September 2020, Ba Nda was named interim president by a group of 17 electors. with Goita being appointed vice president. The government is supposed to preside over an interim period of 18 months. A spoke